what's up, comrades? Hope you're all doing well. We're just here. Oh, go ahead and like, comment, subscribe, share, whatever. We're here to talk about a visual novel, not a visual novel, a light novel series called Min-Maxing My TTRPG Build in Another World. Yes. So it's an isekai. It's a born-again isekai in that, so the main character, Eric, we start off with him just like being a little kid. Like this first book is a lot of him just being like a little kid and growing up in this world and everything that's going on, which is different, and I like it because there's a lot of interesting stuff and we get introduced to characters, and it's like it really slow rolls like how the world functions, and we get little every chapter or so we get these little side narrations about like a TTRPG. Now, if you don't know what a TTRPG is, that's fine. Because it's kind of like a dumb, and like, so it's tabletop role-playing games, right? And you're like, tabletop role-playing games, what the hell is that? It's just Dungeons & Dragons. It's like, all of a sudden when this stuff got popular, I've been playing, like I played the original fucking version of Vampire the Masquerade and Changeling and Werewolf the Apocalypse. I played GURPS. I like the original, like first edition. I played like first edition AD&D. I played, like I didn't play the original Dungeons & Dragons, I'm not that old, but I played the original Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. I played original Warhammer RPG back in the day, Rifts, Ninja Turtles, all this shit, right? I've been playing role-playing games, like tabletop role-playing games. I've been playing like dice and pencil role-playing games, which is what we used to call them, pencil and dice games, since I was like, I don't fucking know, in kindergarten, like 85 or something, in 1985, right? And I've never heard the term tabletop role-playing games until like a year ago. I know this is a huge tangent, but whenever I literally grabbed this from like my backlog of like audiobooks for light novels that I downloaded from the vault or something, and I was like, I literally thought it was going to be something else, because it's like when I see TTRPG, it still doesn't click in my brain that that's what they're talking about, because it's kind of stupid. But like, it's not inaccurate in what it's saying, but at the same time, it's like I almost feel like this is like something that must have like. It seems more like when you say it like that, when you say like a tabletop, I'm thinking like Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition or something, or something like Hero Quest. Like you got this like board you're setting up on a table. Because I've literally played Rifts and GURPS and shit like in the woods while we're fucking hiking, right? With like nerd friends when I was much younger. Like literally just like someone's telling a story and we're like reacting, and then you just like flip a fucking coin to see if you succeeded or not, right? So this whole like, you gotta sit at a table. I mean, it's virtual tabletops, and I think it really seems like it's a virtual tabletops thing, or like this is like a Mercer effect thing. I've gone way off in left field. I'm sorry. Anyway, it's just I don't like that reference, but it's nice in this light novel series that because I don't think like Dungeons & Dragons is not as, and these other games are not as popular in Japan. So I think it was nice. It's nice that like every chapter or so they have like a little, I don't know if it's a page, because I don't have the physical book because it's an audiobook, but they'll be like game master. A game master is this. Player, this is what a player is. Session, this is what session means. Campaign, this is what campaign means. So that's excellent. This whole thing's very well written. And it's very interesting, and it's like nice character development, and it's like quirky and lighthearted, but you know it takes the world seriously, and it's not like the villainess is a SS plus ranked adventurer was like, that's like a humor book. It's like very silly, and it's supposed to be silly, and it's silly for like teenage preteen girls. Like that is the humor. This is more mature. This is for like a teenage boy, I would say. Right, where it's like it's humorous, but it definitely, and it focuses on a main protagonist character, and it's got like sexy lowly characters that like want to bang him, and then like sexy ogre character who's like, we're talking ogres like that time I got reincarnated as a slime ogre, right? Like we're not talking about like, oh, I'm an actual ogre from like Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons or something. We're talking about like an oni, essentially. Okay, so that all the way. The story begins, and Eric is like a little boy, and he's just like sitting there, and then he kind of like starts remembering things from like his previous life. And what happened is he was like a salary man who was in his mid-30s in Japan. It's an isekai. It is what it is. Who dies, and then because he died too soon or something, one of the Buddha is or like a someone who is who's working on being a Buddha, like who's like some transcendent godlike character, is like, hey, so I want to send you to this world. So every now and then we grab people and we send them to worlds that like need extra help to like get shit done. So we wanted to send you over there, and then you'll be able to kind of like control your level up. Like I said, as you mature and grow into like an adult, you'll have a little bit more sway on like how that functions. So you get like a little bit of a cheat versus other people. And the guy was like, yeah. And as he hits like, I think 5 years old, he starts to like remember all this. And then he's able to access kind of like a stat menu. Like if you've ever seen like an isekai anime or familiar with this genre at all, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Or Sword Art Online, that one's super popular. Most people have seen or heard that. Where they click something in the window, and then it like pulls up this little stat screen and they can look at stuff. Essentially, he can do that. But I think it's like in his brain, so it's more like the time I got reincarnated as a slime, where he just like thinks stuff. There's not like a voice there. There's not like the magi or whatever that Rimuru has. But in this, he can just kind of be like, "Ooh, I got experience points. Where should I put them?" But and a lot of stuff's locked. Like at some point he tries to do magic, but he can't do magic because he's not born with it, and because certain things, like he can like level up normal stuff, like his strength or his dexterity or his ability to be sneaky or his ability to like wood carve, like kind of little kid stuff. But then he has to actually be engaged in certain activities to unlock those paths, right? So he starts off and we get introduced to him. He's the youngest of 4 brothers, and then he's got a little sister who's very sick, who's adorable, and there's definitely going to be some siscon in this. Based on this and everything we know. So this world is like a very fantasy world. It's got a lot of demi-humans, which the Japanese love throwing that around for anyone who's not human. So there's like elves and dwarves. We've met dwarves. There's arachnids who are very lowly con. It's even like, so his best friend, Margaret, is she's an arachnid. And you learn that, so everyone's considered an adult at like age 15 in this world. But even like Margaret's mother, who's like in her 40s or 50s or something, still looks like a lolicon. Like she's like thin and looks young, and not like a child per se, but like a adolescent, I would say, is the way they kind of describe it. But they're very like, and the arachnids have like some demon blood or whatever in them, so they're very like sensual. Good stuff. And there's other demi-humans like that as well. But then there's like dwarfs, and dwarfs are just gruff, and they like to hammer shit out and whatnot. So fun. I'm all about that lolicon, so I'm all for it. Then okay, so we get introduced to like his brothers, and his brothers are mad because he's just like smarter and better at doing things. Because again, he's like a 30-year-old man trapped in like a 5-year-old's body, and then he has all these like, skill points he starts pushing around, and he's very judicious about it. And he spends time talking about how like, besides being like a salary man in Japan in like the 1990s or 2000s, he was a super like otaku for like Dungeons and Dragons essentially, and then he would play it all the time, and he'd min-max, and he didn't dungeon master it and whatever. But that from his experience doing all this stuff, playing Pathfinder and whatnot back in the other world, he's established like a very methodical way to like level up. And part of it is he's 5, he doesn't really know the world, he knows like his family and like the local area, so like he puts some skills in like farming, for example, because his family is like a farming family. Or he puts some skills in woodworking because he kind of figures out pretty young that like that can go, like you can carve like statues of like the goddesses, and like the gods and goddesses in this world are real, so it's very much like a Pathfinder Dungeons & Dragons style world where it's like there's no question that these gods exist and interfere with like people's lives. And I'm basing everything on like not 5th edition forward because who cares about that shit? But like these gods, like they exist and they interact, and you can like summon their favor and stuff. And then there's like, he tries, like I said, at some point, like there's a fair, and like a magician comes, and he talks to the magician, and he figures out that like these magic users have like a third eye essentially, where they can see things others can't. Like at some point, he's like, "Hey, want you to teach magic," and then the magician's like, "It's like nighttime," and he's like, "How many moons are in the sky?" And his response is one. And then he's like, "Shit! If he was asking me about it, it's probably more than one." Which it is. And then the old man's like, "Well, I can't really teach you magic." And then he explains that, like, wizards, people who are born inherently with the ability to do magic, they have like a sense of things that are like not always there, because it seems like it's working off like Mage the Ascension logic, where it's like magic is the ability to like pull in for like is to like change the world around you based on how you perceive things, and so like your perception of things and then your mana. It's at this point it seems that that is what allows magic to be created. So if you can't like see the world differently, it's like real hard for magic to be like successful. This is also one of those what the hell's going on here? The that's kind of how like the Faerun's Forgotten Realms, the Fririn magic system kind of works too. It's like if you can believe it, then you can achieve it. So if you can't see yourself, because that comes up a lot, like if you can't see yourself winning a battle, then you will not win that battle. You have to be able to perceive yourself being able to do that. Yeah. Anyway, but then like, the church is very strong, and like, so he can access a lot of faith stuff, but he's kind of skeptical about doing that, mostly because he doesn't want to get caught up in like whatever. And, in this world, it's like, so his brother, the oldest brother, is going to eventually like, take over the farm, because that's how this shit works. And there's like a whole separate like noble language and like schooling he has to do to like kind of step up in the world and be like the head of the family, essentially after his dad dies. Or, his dad steps aside. So then the other brothers have to find like other shit to do. And so he's trying to figure out like, should I be an adventurer? Should I go into the clergy? I wanted to be a mage, but that's not going to work out apparently. I can try to be like a guardsman, like work for the nobility and whatnot. So we spent a lot of the early chapters just kind of him growing up, meeting new friends. This is where we meet Margaret. He establishes like he recognizes that his brothers are a little jealous of him because he's much smarter and more talented than them. But he essentially establishes that like, I am no threat to you. I support you. Let's all be friends. And so that works out well. So he has a good relationship with his brothers. Like I said, his little sister is like very sickly, and she should be dead multiple times, but the family keeps like pulling their resources together and getting like a blessing from the goddess or getting tinctures and stuff. And at one point she's like gonna die, and the family's like out of money. And then he spends like 2 days like carving this goddess statue, and they're able to trade it at the church to get like a miracle, which is like the super blessing, which is like the magic the priests use, and that cures her. So there's actually a manga that this is. There's also a manga of this. This is out of nowhere. I had a recording break, and I was trying. I had a long day at work, and then and then I was trying to remember the name of the lowly spider. It's Margaret, and Eric. And then I literally just Googled like, who's the spider chick from this thing, and it was like, would you like to read the first 7 volumes of this manga? And I'm like, there's a manga based on this. I wonder where it came first. I'm assuming the light novel. That's usually how it works, but that's fun. I love manga. Comics are so good. Anyway, so the reason I bring this up is because I want to talk about Margaret for a little bit, because I just kind of skipped some of her stuff. So Margaret is a great character. One, she's a spider woman, and two, she's like a loli, which is like all around. So with her. So her family is a family of hunters. Hunters are different than adventurers. They like hunt meat, and then again, they're very like sexual at a very young age. And she keeps trying to like hold hands and give sweet kisses to Eric because she's got like a crush on him, and he's very like, oh, I'm only like 12 years old. You're only like 12 years old, and I'm only like 10. We can't be doing any of this crazy stuff. And he's got like very Japanese sensibilities when it comes to what's proper and what's not. But also, I feel like this world is not too far off distance from that. But her being a hunter is important, and she's also trained in like the palatial language, which that comes up a lot because like the eldest son is supposed to be trained in the palatial language, or the eldest daughter, like that as part of like running your shop. Palatial language is kind of like common in Pathfinder or Dungeons & Dragons, it seems. And then you have like your local dialect. So he's trying to learn the palatial language, right? And Margaret is like making fun of him, and so she's like, "I'll teach you for like a kiss or whatever." So yes, they kiss her, and they have to do smooch, and then she teaches him, and then he goes and does like a poem for his parents, and they're like, and he's like, "What's wrong?" And it's like, "You're speaking like a woman. Women speak different than men in the palatial language." And he's like, "Oh, freaking kissing Margaret." Anyway, she's a great character. I hope she sticks around. So, so she's very flirty. There's like a. Let's see. So the girls so far are Margaret, and then as he gets older, his like sister. So more time goes by after his sister's healed and everything's kind of good. There's like a whole thing where like the local guardsman like gets together with all like the young men and is like, all right, who wants to be a guardsman? And again, it's like, if you're not the eldest son, you got like limited life choices because you're not going to take over the farm. So you have to marry into someone else's. Like if they have an oldest daughter, you can marry that woman and then you kind of take over their business. You can join the guard, you can be an adventurer, you can be a priest, right? And so none of this stuff sounds like really like a big fan, but you know, all the boys go. And then this guy just like kind of beats the shit out of all these guys to teach them they don't want to be in the guard, except for Eric. And he's able to kind of not fend him off, but he's able to like dodge enough or like roll out of the way enough where he's not hurt. And because he gets kind of beat up here so much in this combat, he unlocks like all combat skills. And then he starts investing like heavily in like, especially like dexterity and dodge and like defense and then swordsmanship. And he ends up being very, very good. Like at some point he's fighting somebody who's trying to train him on the sword. And Eric is like much better than him at the sword. And he's like kind of ashamed. Oh man. But again, a lot of the fun stuff in this is just him like contemplating what stats and which experience points you should get and whatnot and trying to weigh out like, what am I supposed to do doing in this world? And at some point he kind of like, he's doing the guard thing for a little bit. He's not doing it, but he's like doing like the apprenticeship or something. And he's still like carving stuff. And then he's like, man, I probably just need to go be an adventurer. Fuck. So he's kind of starting to get resolved to do that. So he's like we have this whole thing where they have like a shogi / chess style game and like hand carved pieces and like are fantastic. And since his wood carving skill is like level 9, which I think is the highest, he breaks it down at some point. It's like I think it's 9. It's like when you're level like 5, you're considered a master, I think. It's like level 3 or 4 of a skill is like average. And then 5's like good, I want to say. And then when you get higher, you're like really, really good. And at some point, I think he like completely maxed out like his wood carving skills. So he's like a master artisan. So he created these pieces and he's trading them with like a dwarf who's the blacksmith in town. And they're having like talks about dwarfs and stuff. And he talks about how sexy and like filled out dwarf women are, which like high five. This story is awesome. But then this guy's like, this is like some of the best stuff I've ever seen. He's like, can I get like a plate of armor for this? And the guy's like, yeah, for sure. Fuck yeah. It's like, hells yeah. So he makes that deal. I'm trying to think of other. Oh, then his older brother gets like betrothed, and they have like a big marriage ceremony. And I guess in this like town, they have like multiple. They have like a marriage festival. It's like everyone is getting married. They get like married together by the church, and then they have like it's at like the harvest festival or whatever. And there's all sorts of like shady stuff going on, as in people trying to hook up, and like a lot of people end up getting together with like their partners when they're not like the eldest children at these things. Because with the eldest children, it's more kind of like, hey, we need to like combine forces here so that we can perpetuate the line and what's going on. And there's all sorts of like tests and like civil service crap like that they have to go through. But for everyone else, it's like YOLO. It's always at this thing. Is it this thing? It might be a different thing, actually. There might have been 2 festivals. But anyway, at one of these festivals, people are like drinking, and then Margette is getting like real good with, like in close with him and like touchy and feely. And she's like, come on, let's go do something. And he's like, what do you mean we're doing this? And she's like, no, come on, let's go by ourselves. And he's like, what are you talking about? And then like some of his homies from the village are like, oh man, here it goes. And he's like, what are you guys talking about? He's like, Margette's going to take him off into the alleyway and they're going to fuck. And he's like, wait, what? Hold on, what's happening? And we do get some, mostly it's his perspective, but we get a little bit from Margette's perspective at some point. Just her like thinking about like raping this guy essentially, or turning him into like her sex slave or whatever crazy spider shit she's into, which is great because again, lowly spider. So that's fun. So then we get to the wedding party. I'm trying to yeah, there's a lot of kind of just like slice of life stuff in this that is good, but I don't know if I really need to. It's really important to like chit chat about how he's just like going on like fun adventures with his brothers when they're kids and just hanging out with whatever. Yeah, so at the wedding festival thing, we get a shot with him and his sister, and he tells us more about like how she's been sickly, but he keeps managing to like help out the family, and he talks more about how the family is like very well off compared to other farmers. Like they not only are pulling in like enough money to survive every year, but they're like putting money away for stuff. And even though they have to like take care of his sickly sister, otherwise she might just like get up and die at any moment, that because of his woodworking and some other shit that he's doing, they're able to like maintain a pretty prosperous lifestyle. Anyway, so they're out, and him and his sisters are out, And she's like, big brother, like Oni-chan, Oni-san, constantly. And then finally they're like some merchant stall, and she sees some like beautiful pearl, and it's worth like 5 gold pieces. And then we get like a whole economics lesson about the different kind of monies, and like it's like Spice and Wolf, or even like the fucking there's like a whole chapter in like the Book of Mormon about like money values and stuff. It's kind of funny. Whenever I read it, I think of that. But it's important to note because it's relevant for here. So apparently this pearl that the sister thinks is so beautiful and that she wants, and that like giving a pearl to like the one you love means you'll be together forever or something really sister con about this whole situation. Is that she, he was like, oh, I don't have 5 drachma. I got like 50 silver pieces, which are like half a gold piece. And then like we have a whole conversation about like not all gold is equal either. Some gold is worth more than others because of impurities or because like the nation that backs it up. And there's even like a Jose Cuervo coin, which is worth like way less than like a regular gold piece because I don't remember the reason why. Like they're thinner or some shit. Anyway, that's relevant because we find out there's like rat men, and of course rat men are stingy money grubbers who are sneaky. It's like way to play the stereotype. So this guy has a contest. If you can split like this helmet in half, he'll give you like the 5 gold pieces. Oh no, I'm sorry. The pearl's 3 gold pieces. But if you can split the helmet in half, he'll give you 5 gold pieces. And it's like awesome. I think the Jose Cuervo gold pieces are worth like half as much as the other gold pieces, if I recall correctly. Yeah, something like that. Anyway, so he goes to like cut the helmet in half, and he talks about like he has a skill where he can identify things, and he notices that the helmet is steel, but it's like covered in mithril, like a mithril primer or something. But that there's still like a weak point, and then he takes his sword and he doesn't just cut through the fucking helmet. He cuts through like the table the helmet's on. Like he just like decimates it, and everyone's like, ooh, like all the merchants are like clapping, and the rat's like, holy shit. And it looks like the rat's about to break neg on the deal. But there's like the boobacious, like sexy blue-skinned ogre lady that I mentioned before, and she's like, all right, pay up, motherfucker. And the rat's like, ooh, boy, okay, here you go. And he gives him the 5 coins, and when Eric looks at him, it's like, oh, it's a Jose Cuervo fucking coin. It's only worth like 250. And he's like, oh, man. And then the ogre looks at it, and she's like, and like looks back over at the rat. And the rat's like, what? That's the deal. He said 5 gold coins. I didn't say what kind of coins. And then there's like a whole thing where like she's like, oh, magnanimous lord of the caravan or something to like the guy who was selling the pearl. Perhaps you, this great warrior or something, like this whole speech. And Eric's like, the fuck? And he's like, oh, she must be like the head guard for like this caravan, and he must be like the guard. And like he's going to give me that pearl for like this lower price because he wants to show all the merchants that he's hot shit, which is exactly what happens. And so he gets his sister his like engagement pearl from him so they can get married. It doesn't say that. He doesn't like make the connection, but like when I'm listening to it, I'm like, wait, did you just get engaged to your sister with this fucking pearl? We'll see. And then not only that, I think they give him like an extra drachma, I think they give him an extra drachma on top of like she does, because she's like, you earned 5, I'll give you one of mine. Here you go, buddy. And so he takes it back to give to his parents and be like, hey, we should put this away. This is a lot of fucking money. And they're like, no, let's buy drinks. And so they buy drinks. They buy alcohol for everybody. There's like one everybody. And everyone's getting drunk, and they're like celebrating this dude, and they're like talking about going and doing more crazy stuff. And he's like, holy shit, I'm glad I invested a lot in like alcohol resistance in this fucking place. And then his brother, who just got married, gets like, his fiance is like, hey, you hold the fuck up. We're going to go bang. We're going to go consummate this marriage right the fuck now. In fact, all you guys, you need to bring it back because several of you just got married, so this needs to happen. And then his brother's like, oh, shit. And then Eric's like, yeah, bro, you fucked up. And so the wife grabs the older brother by the ear and like drags him off. And it's like, see ya. I don't want to be ya. So Eric has some like real hard thinking about what he's going to do with his life, and we learn a little bit more about like what happens to non-first sons and how they have to get married off or inherit like property from a family member who didn't have any sons or no children at all or whatnot, and that he's finally decided he's going to be an adventurer, like officially, I guess. So he talks to his mom and dad about it, and they're fine with it, but before he becomes an adult at age 15 in this world, he has to prove that he can do it. So he has like a checklist of things. So he has to get like armor, weapon. He has to get like enough food and money to last him like a month, because there's not like this is like a medieval fantasy world, and unlike Dragon Quest where you can just like what's it called? There's like a teleport spell back and forth to different towns you've been to. It would take weeks. Like it takes like days by like caravan or by cart just to like get to like the next major city. So like if he's off adventuring somewhere, like he will probably never see most of his family ever again. And so, they want to like send him off in a way that's going to like help him actually be successful. So he goes to pick up his armor, and it's like super stiff, and it's kind of like it sounds like a leather-based armor with like some chain stuff, and it's like really hard for him to move. And so while he's sitting there, and the dwarf's like talking about like what he's got to do and how he's got to like train with the armor and get used to the machinations, he just like puts leveling. He just puts experience points in like light armor skill, and then he can use it like super well. Like he levels up to like level 6 or something, which is very high. Remember, because like 4 is like I'm pretty good. I think I said it was average before, but it's like craftsman level, so it's like average for somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And then level 5 is like real good, and then 6 is like more of like an expert, and then like 9 is like the best of the best kind of situation, if I remember correctly now. Okay, so and then the dwarf's like super impressed with this and everything, so he practices with that a little bit, and then he gets out, and we get scenes of him and Margit just hunting, and it seems like it's not said directly, but it seems like she's going to go with him to be an adventurer. I'm not sure if that's 100% because he keeps referring to her as like a party member and how he doesn't have to invest in as much into like essentially being like a ranger, because she's got like all those ranger skills from like Pathfinder or Dungeons and Dragons style games, where like the survival in the wilderness, like hunting, tracking, all that stuff, she's like super expert. Like she can like just kind of like glance around and be like, oh, there's something that way, and it's like, how'd you know? And it's like, well, this leaf over here was like slightly crunched in like a certain way. Right, because that's like she's a hunter. That's like her whole like species situation, is they're all like really good at hunting things, and they're out like hunting these rabbits, and we learn that these rabbits are like very bad because they eat sapling, like tree saplings, so like it can affect like the lumber trade, and the lumber trade's very important because of firewood, which is essential, or just like building homes or fixing things or whatnot. So that it's all pretty fun stuff, and they like camp out for the evening, and they're like being very cuddly and stuff. So it's super adorbs. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, she loves to like attach herself to his back and like fire arrows and stuff from there, or do whatever she's doing, just like give him sweet kisses in the ear or whatever. Oh man, good stuff. It's all very sweet until you realize she is, let me check my notes, 15 and he is 12. But I guess you're an adult at 15, so it's kind of like being 18 and 16 maybe, just slightly less uncomfortable. What else? Okay. Then, so we go through all that, and it's just a lot of talk about preparation, getting out of there, doing what he's going to do, what his first plan of action is, where he needs to go, the guild. I don't think he mentions the guild system, actually. And then, and how supportive his parents are. And then we focus back on his sister. We get some point of view from his little sister. I don't remember her name. But she's super pissed because she's now 8, I want to say. So it's been a year since like the whole Pearl Ridge incident, just the Pearl, where she got the Pearl, and she's like madly in love with her older brother, obviously, and at some point a little bit later than this, Margaret comments about how like she is super clingy ever since this incident, and that she'll always find reasons for them just to be alone together, and she'll always want to be doing stuff, and she gets mad and pouty anytime they do like group play or anything like that. And then they play like this game where he pretends to be a wizard and she pretends to be his familiar, which is like the job nobody wants. No explanation why, it's just no one wants that job, but she does, because then she gets to be clingy to her older brother and all this stuff. So Margaret is like reflecting on that at some point as well. Oh, also, we spend time in the head of the ogre lady, so we get that whole incident from her perspective, and we learn more about her culture. Like, they're a matriarchal society, and the women are like the warriors, and then they do all this stuff, and like the kiss she gave him was like her marking her territory, which is kind of what I figured before, but is like very explicitly like, if any other ogres see this guy, they will not attack him, or I mean they might fight with him, but they're not going to kill him, and they will not like try to ravage him sexually because she has like marked her claim on this guy. And then there's a lot of like with the ogres, like the whole sex battling thing seems a little mixed there. Like there seems to be it's like a little bit of both, a little bit of column A and a little bit of column C or B. So that's kind of funny. And that there's different tribes of ogres, and that like mad respect and warrior stuff, and that she was doing her thing and like fighting wars and stuff, and then she kind of got bored with it, and she got tired of like people just dying for no reason. So that's why she joined the caravan. And then she was thinking about how scrumptious it would be to eat but not like literally, like in a sexual way, I'm assuming, or just like through battle, fight this the boy, and she's so excited about it. And so we get like that interesting take as well. Okay, back to the present. So the sister like puts her shoes on and like runs out the door because she's gonna go spend like a carnival day with her brother. But then Margaret so shows up and she's like, "Oh, I want to come." And then Eric's like, "Yeah, of course, you're like my girlfriend pretty much, so why not?" And then so the sister gets super jealous and like runs off on her own. And she's wandering around. And normally that's not a big deal, but then she gets kidnapped by some sleazy guy. But it's the whole thing where it's like, well, normally you think of kidnappers as he's like hunched over, dirty, whatever. But he's dressed like a noble and he's very like. He like poisons her, throws her in a burlap sack, and like takes her away. And then we hit back to Eric and Margaret, who realize that she's gone, and they get kind of concerned, and so they start tracking her through the city. And then we get a lot more about how Margaret is like so expert that like the dust on the ground and like the way like just crap like that is like she can like track where the sister is, especially particularly because she knows exactly like the height, weight, and all that stuff. Margaret and Eric are able to track through the town and figure out where this bandit camp. They're actually not bandits. They're some merchants pretending to be. They're people pretending to be merchants who are actually like child thieves, right? And their little like caravan thing for this like festival that's going on. Margaret at first doesn't want to go. She's like very concerned when she realizes that it's a kidnapping because again, they're not heroes. Eric is like 12 or 13, I think, and she's 15 because they keep mentioning she's almost an adult, and 15 in this world is when you're considered an adult. So, but then Eric uses his silver tongue to convince her to they have to find it, and then she makes him promise that he'll essentially she makes him promise that he'll do something for her in return that kind of gives her the motivation to continue on with doing this. Obviously, she wants to get down and dirty with this guy, so that's what she's gonna wish for. We did get the story of the head of this child kidnapping ring, and it's kind of tragic, but not so. It's this guy who was born with like unlimited magical powers, and he was kind of like a hedge witch in that he just like knew magic and could do things and like could envision things and make things happen, but he had like no academic background, and he was very greedy when it came to increasing his status in life. So like he started off in like a small town, and then he like said, "Fuck you guys, I'm leaving," so that he could work for like a local magistrate in like a bigger town. And then while he was there, he learned about like the Magic Academy and about being a magus, which is like someone who graduates high from the Magic Academy. And he's like, "Oh, I'm really good at magic. I've seen some of these magi, these magus. They're pieces of shit. I'm way better than them." So then he heads off. He nopes out of that job after being there for a year. He's just like, "Adios, motherfuckers. I've got better things to do." And so then he heads off to the Magic Academy, and on the way he bumps into like a magus like on the caravan that he's taking, and he's like showing her all this stuff and trying to really impress her so he can let her a recommendation, and she's like, "That's very wasteful." And he's like, "Nani?" And then he's very upset by like this cold reception he gets from this lady. And then he gets to the Magic Academy, and they essentially just like boot him out, and they're like, "Hey man, you don't know what you're doing. Like you got to study and like learn how magic actually functions, and then maybe you can come back." And he was so angry about it, he's just like, "No, fuck that, I'm out." So then he goes back to the magistrate, and that guy's like, "No, fuck you, man. You just like pieced out. Like you're not welcome back here." And he's like, "Fine, I'll go back home." So he goes back home. But then like the person he was apprenticed to there, the mage, and all like the local ladies, it was very specifically mentioned like all the ladies who I guess were in love with him when he was younger, are like cold shouldered him now, and they're like, "Fuck you, like you just pieced out, like none of us mattered. You're an asshole." So so then he's like, "What do I do?" And the only thing he can do is turn to child kidnapping. The fuck? So he's kind of an asshole. So he's thinking about all this, and then we get the guy who kidnapped the sister. He comes rolling up, and I guess they met, and there's the three of them. There's the wizard, and then this guy who's like always been a criminal, and then there's like another guy who like forges documents, and he used to work in like the actual office where they make documents, and so he's really good at forging because he knows exactly what they're supposed to look like. We don't meet that guy yet. But these two guys go back and forth, and the one guy is like really chummy, and the wizard doesn't like it because he still thinks he's like much better than anyone else. And they show him the girl, and he comments how like this girl is like pristine, like she looks like a noble, like she's never like this is like a small farming village, but she's never even been outside. Like she's got porcelain skin, and there's no like calluses on her legs or hands. There's no scars. There's like nothing. And it's because she's been sick and she can't leave the house. But he's like very drawn to this whole thing. He's like, yes, this is going to give me a lot of money. I know it's not a noble, so we can't ransom, but we can definitely sell her. She'd be quite the commodity. So he's like, all right, we got to get out of here. Close up. And then the one goon is like, no, but what about drinking and partying and stuff? And he's like, no, we're going to leave right now. So get everything going. Meanwhile, Margit and Eric get to the camp, and they're like, oh, damn, there's a lot of guys here. And then they like make comments about how some of these guys are pretending to like be asleep or not paying attention, but they're actually got hidden weapons and all this stuff. And then Eric's plan is like, all right, let's go get the town guard and we'll come like fuck these dudes up. And then Margit's like, no, see, they're leaving. They're like leaving right now. Like, we don't have time. And he's like, I got to distract them. So he runs over and starts chit-chatting with them. And then we switch over to Margit's POV. And she's like very concerned because she's got like a bad feeling. And her bad feelings are like always correct. And so she's hiding in a tree, like watching. And she sees a guy approaching Eric from behind and like holding a dagger that Eric's normally would be, he'd be paying more attention, but he's so distraught with like his sister's shit that he's not. And so she finds like this fairy coin in a tree, and she takes her ribbon out of her hair and turns it into a sling and hits this guy and like shit, breaks his arm. She hits him so hard with this thing. And he's like, rah! And then Eric like turns and is like ready to fight. And Margaret's like, all right, my boyfriend's got it now. He's going to fuck them up. I'm going to go get the town guard. And then she like scurries off. Eric literally kicks the shit out of all these guys. Once Margit rescues him from the ambush guy. It's a pretty good written battle scene. Like he's cutting dudes' knees out, breaking their legs, like hitting them upside the head, like rolling around. He goes from like dagger to sword to other dagger, or no, dagger to dagger to sword to another dagger, and then he like deflects an arrow. Like it's pretty radical. And he's using all his like skills he's put in for being like a 12-year-old. He's really beating the shit out of these guys, and they're like stunned. Finally, the mage guy comes out of his carriage, like kind of drunk and disheveled. He's like, "The fuck's going on?" And they're like, "He cut my head." And he's like, "God damn it! What?" And so then he hits Eric with a very powerful like concussive blast and sends him like spinning and rolling away. But because of all the training and experience points he's invested in, like the skills protect him, he's able to like not take the full brunt of the damage, even though it like cut him up and he sounds like he swallowed some teeth. Unfortunately for him, he's able to get back on his feet and he starts heading towards the wizard again. And then they go back and forth, and we get the wizard's point of view, and he's like, what the fuck? How's this kid dodging all this stuff? And he's getting more and more irritated, which makes him more and more inaccurate, and, he's just, like, building up. And Eric realizes this, and he's like, I gotta, I'm killing time, but I gotta, like, I'm running out of stamina, and I need to get in there. So he keeps trying to move forward and keeps having to, like, dodge back and away, and it's pretty rad sounding. Like, this should be great, like, anime to watch. This whole scene sounds like it's a pretty rad battle. Finally, Elisa, the sister, she pops her head out of the carriage and is like, brother, Oni-san, or Oni-chan. So the translation on this book is not great. And I know that because whenever, instead of calling him like it's Oni. Oni-chan or Oni-san or whatever, which is what like you call your older brother. One-chan. She keeps saying Mr. Brother, which, yeah, if you're going to use an honorific like Chan or San, I mean, technically the equivalent is like Mr. and Mrs. But the little girl is not calling her brother Mr. Brother, so I don't understand the concept of that. She should just be like, brother. But whatever, Mr. Brother. I guess it's cute. Maybe that's why they went with it, because she's supposed to be little and like, oh, Mr. Brother. It's like, oh, it's adorable. She's retarded. I don't know. Anyway, so the wizard gets like real hot and mad. He's like, fuck it. I'm done playing around. Because, part of his motivation was like, oh, this guy's got a lot of skills. Just kind of like I was born with a lot of skills. Like, he'd be a great slave, so I can probably make a lot of money off him. So if I can kind of like knock him out, then we could sell him along with his sister as like a, this sexy virgin little girl and like her warrior brother. That'd be great. But then he's getting so mad and so frustrated with the whole battle. He's like, fuck it, I'm going to cast a big spell. And so he's getting that set up, and he's got like a magic circle, and he's clearly, and Eric even recognizes, he's like, oh man, I'm fucked. I can't dodge this shit. This guy's really going to town. But you know what? Fuck it. Roll the die. Let's see what happens. So right as this guy is supposed to, or about to blast Eric with a super powerful blast, his spell just gets like zipped away. Why? We don't know. It has something to do with Alyssa, the sister, obviously. We have a little point of view from her where she's like in a sack, and she climbs out of the sack, and then she looks through the dirty carriage and looks and sees this crazy guy doing something to her brother, and she's like, no! And that turns it off. So obviously she has some sort of power that we're not aware of. At that point, Eric runs up and bashes the shit out of this guy. He doesn't kill the mage, which is always a mistake, because he thinks that if he crushes his mouth and he can't use like the verbal components, like in a regular role-playing game, Pathfinder, that he won't be able to cast his spell. But Rutro, he's got a staff that he doesn't need to use verbal components for to cast spells with. Now they're in real trouble. So he's about to cast this giant thing and blow everybody up when this woman with like white hair, who's called a Methuselah, who's like a mensch, which is a human in this world, but they live forever or are essentially immortal unless they get killed. She just goes, nope, and like turns the spell off. And then the guy like flips out, and we get revealed that like the magus that like essentially laughed at him the first time he was going to the Capitol and told him he was a piece of shit, this is her. And he's like, I will kill you. And he starts to cast another spell. And then she goes like, nope. And goes, zoop. And then he just disappears. And then she's like, I came over here because I felt a disturbance in the force / something mana variance, something. Is that you? And she walks up to Eric, and he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And he's like, well, how did you get a changeling? Dun, dun, dun. We then skip ahead 8 years, I want to say. We don't realize that right away. First, we get some point of view from like this bandit who's planned out this whole thing, and he's been like rampaging around the cantons, which are their little villages around this area, ravaging them, raping the women, and killing everybody, and like razing the cities to the ground. And so they've been scouting out this place, and it's been going pretty good. So they make their attack, and they immediately get destroyed. Short distance crossbows and long bows get shot into them, killing a bunch of them. There's like 30 of these bandits. Not really killing them, I guess. I guess they just like incapacitate them somehow. And then there's a warrior with like a silver sword who leaps out and like massacres everybody. But not really, because it doesn't kill anybody. He just maims them, because apparently if you turn bandits into like the capital alive, they're worth like 2 to 5 times as much money. So it's Eric, and I was 20 years old. Great. And guess what? He married Margit. Aw, and they have a little girl. Aw. A little spider baby. Fun times. So we get all that. And it's interesting because I was like, this sounds like the end of this series. Because essentially says like, I decided not to be an adventurer and not go out into adventuring. And I decided to stay here with my family. And, you know, me and Margit, we were fucking one night and we had a baby. And I could have pulled out, but I decided I didn't want to. And it's none of your damn business why I decided that. And so now we have a beautiful baby spider girl, and everyone's like super happy. And I stuck around, and now we're married, and everything's great. And Lambert's still like my master, that old guy who trained me. And Alyssa's like sad because she wanted to marry her brother, obviously. And we get no answer in the changeling. And so then he goes and he talks about how he learned how to like sing somewhat with his like experience points so that he could sing his baby to sleep. And then his wife sexually assaults him, but he's cool with it, right? Obviously, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna tie you up in my like spider legs and stuff, and then we're gonna fuck and have another baby." And he's like, "Oh no, please don't have sex with me, my sexy lolly spider wife. Oh no." And that's the end of the book. We also get commentary that when mensch, such the humans, have sex with demi-humans, it almost always becomes the demi-human or the mom. Whatever the interracial sex happens, the mom is the one who determines the race, I guess, of the character. So this book was pretty interesting. I enjoyed it. It was fun. It was kind of silly, and like it was intriguing. But you know, it's isekai, so we know that the main character is always going to be fine. It got kind of like very gruesome there at the end. Like the whole story up to that point was just like kind of cute story and stuff, and then it got like very adult, like in the very last like chapter or two. With like he was just like massacring people and was describing like limbs were being cut off and all this crazy stuff, and then he doesn't describe the fucking, but it's like, oh yeah, girl, and he kind of hints at it around it. So it's definitely like a PG-13. Up to this point, I don't want to say it's like PG. It's just kind of like, oh, this is fun, cute little story. But I'm glad him and Margit got together. That's great. Now you make the question may be like, I thought this was a light novel. Light novels are like 16 volumes. Yes, they are. And I had the second volume on the audiobook, so I was like, does this continue on from him and his adult? And then I went and looked, and there's going to be a little surprise. But you're going to have to watch the next video to find out what it is. So go ahead and like, subscribe, share, and comment on this. Let me get the full name once more. It's like Tactical... Min-maxing my TRPG build in another world. Volume 1. Cool. Catch y'all later.